The workhouse was once defended as an act of kindness, not cruelty, not punishment, kindness. So how did a system now remembered for suffering come to be described sincerely as humane? I want you to picture a workhouse guardian. He sits at a long table with other local worthies. They oversee budgets, admissions, rations, rules. He believes he is doing good. He is not blind to suffering, but he is convinced that suffering, carefully administered, prevents something worse: dependency, disorder, moral collapse. That belief is the key, because the workhouse was never meant to be comfortable. It was meant to be correct. So where did that idea come from? By the early 19th century, Britain is anxious. Industrialisation has uprooted people. Wages fluctuate. Old parish systems are overwhelmed. Poverty is no longer rare or local. It is visible, mobile, unsettling, and crucially, it's expensive. Relief paid in cash or food is seen as encouraging idleness. Helping too easily, reformers argue, traps people in dependence. The old system is not just inefficient, it's immoral. The Guardian absorbs this logic. He isn't heartless, he is managerial. And managers don't ask how things feel, they ask how they function. Which leads us to a grim conclusion. If poverty is the problem, then hardship becomes the solution. At the heart of the workhouse system is a principle called less eligibility. Relief must always be worse than the lowest paid labour. Why? Because if the poor are comfortable, the working poor will resent them. Worse, they might join them. So conditions are deliberately harsh, not as punishment, but as deterrence. Families are separated. Diets are monotonous. Clothing is institutionalised. Work is dull and repetitive. The Guardian signs off on all of this, not with pleasure, but with conviction. Because cruelty in this framework is not cruelty, it's prevention. But prevention of what exactly? The workhouse is built around a moral distinction: the deserving and the undeserving poor. The sick, the elderly, orphan children, these are unfortunate. They receive sympathy. But the able-bodied poor, they are suspect. If work exists, why aren't they doing it? If wages are low, why don't they try harder? If conditions are harsh, why don't they avoid them? The Guardian does not ask whether a job exists. He asks whether discipline does. And the workhouse becomes a test. Endure it and you prove need. Avoid it and you prove virtue. At least that's the theory. Supporters of the workhouse insist it is humane because it is orderly. There are rules. There is shelter. There is food. There is supervision. Compare this, they say, to the chaos of begging, to starvation, to crime. The workhouse is clean, rational, predictable. But humanity has been redefined. Comfort is no longer the measure. Survival is. The Guardian believes genuinely that the workhouse saves people from worse fates. And perhaps sometimes it does. But that doesn't mean it heals them. So why was dissent so slow to grow? One reason is shame. Entering the workhouse is an admission of failure. Families avoid it until desperation leaves no choice. Another is separation. Families are split apart on entry, husbands from wives, parents from children. This prevents solidarity. It prevents collective protest. Suffering is experienced alone. The Guardian sees this as necessary. Emotional bonds interfere with discipline. Discipline, he believes, is the point. Here's where I want to pause and ask you something. If a system breaks people apart to function, can it ever be humane? I'd really like to know your thoughts, so share them in the comments. Because this question haunted the workhouse long before it haunted historians. And eventually, it reaches the public. Scandals break. Investigations uncover neglect, cruelty and abuse, children mistreated, diets inadequate, punishments excessive. Journalists report, reformers campaign, public sympathy shifts. What shocks people isn't just suffering, it's the intention behind it. The discovery that hardship was designed. The Guardian now finds himself defensive, explaining and justifying. He still believes the system works, but fewer people believe him. And once belief erodes, moral authority weakens. So how does Britain respond when its humane system starts to look inhumane? Britain doesn't abolish the workhouse immediately, it reforms it. Conditions improve, children are educated, medical care expands, oversight increases. But the underlying philosophy lingers. Help must still be conditional. Deterrence still matters. Assistance must still avoid encouraging dependence. The Guardian adapts. New rules, new language, same instinct. This is the pattern of moral U-turns. Systems soften before they end. And eventually they collapse not with a bang, but with embarrassment. By the 20th century, attitudes shift decisively. Poverty is increasingly understood as structural. Unemployment is cyclical. Illness is not failure. The workhouse looks outdated, cruel, counterproductive. It is replaced not because Britain becomes kinder overnight, but because the old logic no longer convinces. The Guardian retires. The buildings remain repurposed as hospitals or housing. The memory lingers, and the word workhouse becomes shorthand for cruelty, not care, which brings us to the heart of the moral reversal. Workhouses were defended as humane because they aligned with the moral framework of their time. They prioritised order over comfort, discipline over dignity, prevention over compassion. They assumed that suffering taught virtue, that hardship corrected behaviour, that kindness, if unconditional, was dangerous. Those assumptions now feel alien, but they once felt obvious. And that's the uncomfortable lesson. The workhouse reminds us all that cruelty doesn't always announce itself as cruelty. Sometimes it arrives disguised as responsibility. Sometimes it speaks in the language of care. Britain didn't build the workhouses because it hated the poor. It built them because it feared them, and feared dependency even more. Understanding that history matters, because whenever help is made deliberately painful, the same question returns. Are we trying to support people or control them? Thanks for walking a little further down the road that made Britain with me. If you liked it, there's a button especially for that down there. And if you liked it and subscribe, there's a whole back catalogue for you to enjoy, including this one that YouTube's chosen especially for you. I think you'll like it. So until next time, take care, and I'll see you soon.